The body hits the black water with a sound like a sack of wet grain. Above the hole in the ice, 3 men stand breathing steam into the December cold, watching the dark bundle sink beneath the surface of the little Neva. One of them mutters something about it being finished, but his voice shakes. The other 2 just stare at the jagged opening, waiting for something that doesn't come. It's just past 4 in the morning on December 30th, 1916, and Grigori Rasputin is finally dead. The peasant from Pokrovskoye who'd held the Russian Empire in his calloused hands for 3 years is drifting toward the bottom of a frozen river. His killers drive away through empty streets, leaving behind a single gulash on the ice. But even dead, Rasputin isn't done with them yet. If you rewind exactly 24 hours, he's not in a river at all. He's pacing the floors of his apartment on Gorokhovaya Street, barefoot on cold wood, his greasy hair hanging loose around his shoulders. Outside, Petrograd is slowly starving under the weight of a war that's eating the empire alive. Inside, the man they call the Mad Monk is drinking tea from a saucer and trying to ignore the telephone that won't stop ringing. The apartment smells like unwashed bodies and cheap tobacco smoke. There's a line of petitioners snaking down the staircase, peasants and merchants, and desperate mothers clutching letters they can't read. They've been waiting since dawn for a scribbled note from Rasputin, some mark that might save their sons from the front or their husbands from prison. He signs them mechanically, his signature looking more like a child's drawing than the hand that moves empires. Around 10 in the morning, a warning comes through official channels. Alexander Protopopov, the Minister of the Interior, sends word that there's a plot brewing, that certain nobles are planning something. The message is clear: stay home, stay safe, don't trust anyone who comes calling. Rasputin crumples the note and throws it in the fire, but his hands are shaking slightly when he reaches for his wine glass. He knows they want him dead. He's known it for months, feeling the hatred in the streets like a physical weight pressing down on his chest. The newspapers call him a German spy, a drunken lecher, the evil genius behind Russia's collapse. None of it's exactly true, but truth stopped mattering in Petrograd sometime around the 2nd million casualties. There's something different about him that morning, though. His daughter Maria notices it first. He keeps walking to the window, staring down at the Okhrana agents stationed on the street corner. They're supposed to be protecting him, but their faces are stone cold, and they write down every name that passes through his door. He tells Maria he had a dream about water, about something dark and cold pulling him down. Around noon, he sits down to write letters. One goes to the Tsar, wherever Nicholas is pretending to command the war effort. In it, he predicts his own death with the precision of a man reading tomorrow's newspaper. If peasants kill him, Russia will survive. If nobles do it, the Romanov dynasty won't last 2 years. The letter feels like prophecy, but it's really just math. Rasputin can read the room better than most people can read books. The Grand Dukes whisper his name like a curse, and the Empress's protection only makes them hate him more. He seals the envelope and sets it aside, knowing it won't be opened until he's past caring about predictions. The afternoon brings the usual parade of desperate people. A woman whose son is missing near Riga sits in his kitchen while the samovar hisses. He tells her the boy will come home in spring, and maybe he believes it. Maybe he's just tired of watching mothers cry. She leaves with her shoulders a little straighter, and that's something at least. But the phone keeps ringing. Alexandra's voice, thin and frantic, begging him to come to Tsarskoye Selo. Another crisis with Alexei. Another hemorrhage that the doctors can't stop. Another night of the heir to the Russian throne bleeding toward death. Rasputin tells her he'll come tomorrow, knowing there might not be a tomorrow, not for him. Around 6, as the winter darkness swallows Petrograd whole, Prince Felix Yusupov arrives. He's 29 years old, prettier than most women, and rich enough to buy small countries. He's also been courting Rasputin's favor for months, playing the role of the fascinated admirer. Tonight, he's sweating despite the cold, his eyes darting around the apartment like a trapped animal's. Felix has a proposition, a private party at the Moika Palace. Just a few friends, some music, good wine, maybe a chance to meet his wife, Princess Irina. Rasputin has been obsessed with meeting her, the Tsar's beautiful niece, and Felix knows it. What Felix doesn't mention is that Irina is in the Crimea, hundreds of miles away. There's something off about the invitation, something that makes Rasputin's skin crawl. He's survived 3 assassination attempts already. His instincts for danger are sharp as broken glass. But vanity is stronger than survival sometimes, and the promise of a royal princess is hard to resist. He tells Felix he'll think about it, then watches the young prince leave with relief that feels almost like fear. The evening stretches out like a held breath. Rasputin eats dinner with Maria, black bread and borscht, peasant food that reminds him of home. He drinks more than usual, which is saying something, pouring glass after glass of sweet Madeira. His daughter asks if he's all right, and he kisses her forehead without answering. Around 9, he starts getting dressed with unusual care. He puts on the blue silk shirt that Alexandra embroidered for him, cornflowers against dark fabric. His velvet trousers, his tall leather boots, his heavy fur coat that makes him look like a Siberian bear. He combs his beard, oils his hair, stares at himself in the mirror like a man preparing for his own funeral. Maria watches him with growing unease. She asks where he's going so late, why he's leaving when the city feels so dangerous. He tells her he's visiting the little one, his nickname for Felix, and that he'll be back before dawn. Then he walks to his icon corner, crosses himself slowly, and says something that chills her blood. "They will kill me tonight. It's just past midnight when the car arrives." Felix comes up the stairs himself, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly. They embrace like old friends, and Rasputin doesn't notice the revolver hidden in Felix's coat. They slip out the back way, avoiding the main entrance, moving through the courtyard like thieves. The drive to the Moika Palace is short but tense. Felix chatters nervously about his wife, about the party waiting for them, about anything except the cyanide crystals in his pocket. Rasputin leans back in the warm car, talking about the war, about the Empress, completely unaware he's riding with his executioner. The city slides past the windows, dark and silent, like a tomb waiting to be sealed. At the palace, Felix doesn't lead him to the grand reception rooms upstairs. Instead, they descend a spiral staircase to a basement that's been hastily converted into a dining room. The walls are stone, the ceiling low and vaulted, and there's a gramophone playing Yankee Doodle on endless repeat. It's a bizarre choice of music, American optimism echoing off Russian stones, creating an atmosphere that feels both festive and funeral. The table is set with petit fours and bottles of Madeira. Half the cakes have been injected with enough potassium cyanide to kill a cavalry regiment. Felix pours wine with hands that barely shake, watching Rasputin with the intensity of a scientist observing a crucial experiment. Upstairs, the other conspirators wait. Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, Vladimir Purishkevich, Dr. Lazavert, who provided the poison. At first, Rasputin refuses the food. He's not hungry, he says, just wants to wait for Princess Irina. Felix feels his heart stop, terror gripping him that the plan might fail before it begins. But then Rasputin changes his mind, reaching for a poisoned cake and popping it whole into his mouth. Felix watches him chew, watches him swallow, waiting for the convulsions. Nothing happens. Rasputin just asks for wine, washing down enough cyanide to kill an elephant with sweet Madeira. He eats another cake, then another, talking casually about his day while death circulates uselessly in his bloodstream. An hour passes, then two. Rasputin is maybe a little drowsy, maybe a little drunk, but very much alive. He asks Felix to play guitar, leaning back in his chair, humming along while Felix's fingers go numb with fear. Upstairs, the conspirators are losing their minds, pacing and drinking, wondering why there's no signal. The poison has failed completely. Whether the cyanide was old, or neutralized by the sugar in the cakes, or simply overwhelmed by Rasputin's legendary constitution, nobody knows. What's certain is that the man who was supposed to be dead is asking for more wine. Felix excuses himself and runs upstairs, bursting into the room where the others wait, looking like he's seen a ghost. They decide to shoot him. There's no other way. Dmitri hands Felix a Browning revolver, tells him it has to be him since he's the host. Felix checks the chamber, his hand steadying with the weight of cold metal, and goes back down to finish what the poison couldn't. He finds Rasputin sitting heavily at the table, breathing with effort now, perhaps finally feeling some effect from the toxins. Felix walks to a crystal crucifix on the wall and says, "Grigori Efimovich, you'd better look at the crucifix and say a prayer." Rasputin looks at the cross, then at Felix, his pale eyes widening as he finally sees the gun. The shot tears through his chest, ripping into his stomach and liver, and he collapses onto a white bearskin rug. The blood spreads across the white fur like spilled wine. Felix drops the gun and runs upstairs, shouting that it's done, weeping with relief and adrenaline. The conspirators rush down to see the body, checking for a pulse, finding none. They turn off the lights and go back upstairs to celebrate, to plan the disposal, to pretend they've saved Russia. An hour later, Felix feels a strange compulsion to check the body one more time. Maybe it's morbid curiosity, maybe it's the need to be absolutely certain. He goes back down to the basement, leans over the corpse, and shakes it gently. That's when the left eye snaps open, fixes on him with pure hatred, and Rasputin lunges upward like a resurrection gone wrong. "Felix, Felix." He screams, his voice thick with blood, grabbing the prince by the throat. Felix tears free and scrambles up the stairs on hands and knees, convinced he's just awakened the devil himself. Behind him, Rasputin follows, crawling up the stone steps, hauling his shattered body toward the light. He bursts through the side door into the courtyard, into the snow, shouting that he'll tell the Empress everything. Purishkevich hears the screaming and runs to the window. He can't believe what he's seeing. The man they poisoned and shot is running across the courtyard toward the gate. He grabs his savage pistol and chases the wounded figure into the night. His first two shots miss wildly, panic making his aim worthless. The third shot hits Rasputin in the back, spinning him around but not dropping him. The fourth shot catches him in the back of the head. That's the one that finally brings him down, face first into the snow. Purishkevich runs up and kicks the body in the temple. Then Felix arrives with a rubber dumbbell, beating the face until it's unrecognizable. They wrap him in a heavy curtain, binding his hands and feet with rope. A policeman outside has heard the shots, but they lie smoothly about shooting a mad dog. Money changes hands, questions disappear, and they load the body into a car. The drive to the Petrovsky Bridge is silent except for the engine strain and their ragged breathing. At the bridge, they struggle to push the heavy bundle through the hole in the ice. The body doesn't want to go down, the fur coat creating buoyancy, bobbing like a dark warning. They have to use their boots, force the man who wouldn't die into the only place that can hold him. One of them loses a galosh in the panic, leaving evidence on the ice for the police to find. 3 days later, when they drag Rasputin's body from the Neva, the autopsy reveals the final horror. There's water in his lungs. Not much, but enough to prove that when they threw him into the river, after the poison and the bullets and the beating, he was still breathing. He was alive under the ice, inhaling black water, fighting for those last few seconds in the absolute darkness. The autopsy also shows something else. The kill shot, the bullet to the forehead, was fired from a different gun. Not Felix's Browning, not Perishkevich's Savage, but a Webley .455, standard issue for British intelligence. Oswald Rayner, a British agent and Felix's friend from Oxford, was in Petersburg that night. Britain was terrified that Rasputin would convince the Tsar to make peace with Germany, leaving them to fight alone. So maybe the final shot wasn't fired by a hysterical Russian prince, but by a calm professional. Maybe this wasn't just a mystical legend about an unkillable man, but a calculated political assassination. The evidence is there in the autopsy photos, in the perfectly round hole in Rasputin's forehead. But like everything else about that night, it raises more questions than it answers. Within months, everything Rasputin predicted came true. The Tsar abdicated in March 1917. The Bolsheviks seized power in October. By July 1918, the entire Romanov family was dead, executed in a basement in Yekaterinburg. The conspirators who thought they were saving the monarchy had just hastened its collapse. Felix Yusupov lived to be 81, dining out on the story for the rest of his life. He wrote memoirs, gave interviews, played the hero who killed the demon. But in private moments, friends said, he would sometimes wake screaming about eyes that wouldn't stay closed. The man he'd tried so hard to kill had found a way to haunt him after all. The strangest detail, the one that never makes it into history books, is what they found in Rasputin's coat pocket. A small icon of Saint Simeon, a gift from the Serena months earlier. She'd told him to keep it with him always for protection. He had, even on the night he knew he was going to die, carrying something sacred into the darkness. There's one question about those final 24 hours that nobody's ever answered satisfactorily. Why did he go to the Moika Palace that night? He was smart, paranoid, experienced with assassination attempts. He knew Felix was connected to people who hated him, knew the political situation was explosive. His own letter proves he knew death was coming. So why walk into that basement? Was it arrogance, fatalism, or simple human loneliness? The need to believe that someone, somewhere, actually wanted his company? We'll never know. He took that answer with him into the Neva. What we do know is that his last 24 hours weren't just a murder. They were the bloody end of an era, the moment when the old Russia began its final collapse. The peasant from Pokrovskoy who'd held an empire together through sheer force of will was gone. And in the silence that followed, you could hear the sound of a dynasty drowning.